Joslyn started with MarketStar around 7 years ago. And she started as a rep, just like many of you have, and has worked her way up to actually be one of our clients on the Reddit side. And she went through obstacles that she was able to overcome. She had to work through COVID, which if you were at MarketStar during that time, we all know how crazy that was. So we're just really excited to see how Joslyn was able to overcome all of those things. So I'm going to pass it over to her.
Thank you, Maddie. Super excited to be here with all of you today. Feels a little like surreal to be sharing my story, because 7 years ago, if you would have said, hey, you're going to be sharing about career growth at MarketStar, I would be really confused and like, are you sure? And even 8 years ago, saying that I was working at MarketStar in Ogden, I had no idea what was in for me. So thank you for the opportunity. So I feel really like talking about your career growth can be, some people can crush it and do really amazing. And for me, I'm like a little nervous about it. So if we can go to the next slide, I want to start off with what I want you to take away from this. And then as you hear the story, that you can kind of take from that. So for the next slide, you have control over your path. I know at times it might feel like you don't, but you do. And so the biggest thing is taking ownership and moving. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So let's go back 7 years let's actually go back 8 years. I was just headed into my final semester of school at Utah State University. And I was really trying to figure out what was I going to do after college? You know, everyone asks you like, what are you going to do after college? What do you want to do? What are your long-term goals, etc. And really at the time I majored in agribusiness. So that means agriculture and business degree. I say it's a cheaper business degree because the Huntsman School, you had to pay a lot of extra tuition, and I didn't have to do that because I was at in the College of Agriculture. Anyway, and so they're like, what is this agribusiness girl going to do? And I was I knew that sales was a really great place to be because I can make a lot of money. And within agriculture, it's hard to make a lot of money. And my husband still had a lot of school left. So I was trying to figure out, how could I stay close? How could I build a career? And then how could I provide for my family? And I heard about the Pinterest MarketStar team, or the Pinterest sales competition that they were doing at Utah State. And I was so excited because Pinterest was such a cool brand. I was a power user, had used it for so many things. And so I entered into the competition. I remember like just thinking, as I learned more about MarketStar through that program, that I was that I could work for a cool brand, still stay in Utah, and also provide for our family. And so fortunately, through that experience, I was able to start with the Pinterest MarketStar team in January 2018. As Nick called out, there was 100+ people in my cohort. We had our classes or our training in a big like ballroom auditorium type vibe in the hotel that's right there. Anyway, so it was like so many people. If you had questions, you're like turning to your neighbor who is also new and trying to figure it out. But we made a lot of memories through that. I remember I went in and I had my first certification call. I can tell you, I did not know what I was doing. This is my first like true sales on the phone job. And I was so nervous and I failed it. And they took us into a room and they said, hey, everyone, if you're in here, it means you failed your certification call. And I was devastated because this was a job I had been so excited for, told all my friends and family, and I was really nervous to be able to have to go back and say, no, I didn't keep the job. So through great mentors and peers that were able to help me, I was able to pass that first certification call. And it was such a relief, but I also knew that that was just where it gets started. Like that is literally like the certification call is such a big milestone and you need to celebrate it, but that's just where it begins, where you need to start delivering revenue. So going onto the floor, I'm getting on the phone calls with advertisers. I'm trying to understand, trying to break through the wall, and they just like weren't talking. And I remember one of my teammates got off his call, and it was a killer call. He got like a high budget commitment. He was so excited. And I was just really frustrated that day. And I remember turning to my manager at the time, shout out to Rebecca Marcotte. And I said, what, do like I have to act like a man to be to be successful? Hindsight, I know that is really silly, because he wasn't successful because he was a man. It was because he was able to be himself and get people to to talk with him. And she turned to me, and I want to quote like what I said. She said to me, no, you just need to be yourself and ask the right questions. That has stuck with me my whole career, of just being myself and really trying to understand like what is true to me. And that has really stuck throughout my whole career. So we had a rough start. I had a really great moment, a really great coaching moment, some real feedback of just like, no, just be yourself. So then let's go into the next slide. I started to get it. I was really starting to understand like, okay, what does that mean to be me? How do I show up to a sales call? And the answer really came down to, I'm really service oriented, meaning I want to lead with service. And I also I hate wasting. If the Reddit team knows anything about me, is if I say you have to do 5 extra clicks to do that, it like irks me so bad. So that has been true for my whole life. And so I was like, hey, I'm service oriented and I like to be efficient. So I really became the product expert. I was talking to people, doing additional like, hey, what are you doing with that advertiser? Oh, tell me more. I was really curious to try and understand what was working, because we weren't as established and had as many playbooks. Like it was just, you're kind of figuring it out, especially with a group of 100 people. So really figuring it out. Had some great calls with mentorship and with a manager, shout out to Amanda Glover, hopping on the call with ColourPop, that I was like, I cannot mess this call up. And she helped me coach through it. And we were able to start to like have that confidence. In my third quarter on the team, I had a quarter where I hit 400% to goal, which was like the most wild, like crazy quarter of my life. And it was incredible, because I was really service oriented. I was trying to make sure my AM got married. And so I had to like fill in for him while he's on his getting married and had his honeymoon. And then it was just crazy. And then later on, the next year, I was chosen to be the pilot for the Australia team, which was really cool. Different hours, starting it out. It was great. So all of that through the growth phase, though, it looks really great and amazing. But I tell you, there were a lot of hard points along the way, such as a last minute change with my amazing AM. The next quarter, I was on vacation. Amanda calls me and was like, hey, can I talk to you? And let me know that my account manager was moving to another team that I wasn't chosen for. I also had a lot of health issues that were going on at the same time, had some personal family things that were happening, and it was a really tough time. And what I had to choose was to show up every day. I had, whether it was showing up for the call, showing up and making that strategy, prospecting, like I had to show up every single day. Amanda was a great manager in both supporting me in those tough phases, but also pushing me and challenging me. So whether you're a new person or you are an expert and you know your role, you know what you're supposed to do, it's okay to be challenged. And I really appreciated that from my managers and helping me grow. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide, I promise I have pictures with my different teams, but I could not find them. So I apologize. We'll blame it on COVID, because a lot of my time as manager was COVID. So I was promoted to a manager in the spring, summer of 2019, right as I was doing like the Australia pilot. So it was really, really wild. What I found is, so I was very service oriented, but also remember I had that efficiency. And I was like, oh my gosh, why are we doing this? So we started standardizing, hey, what does our call prep look like? What decks are we using? How does it look like? What is our pipeline management follow-up? And I was able to help and standardize that across not only my reps, but also with the other teams on it. I really struggled becoming a manager, because I think something you might experience if you go from an individual contributor to a manager is, as a IC, you have all the control. Like, you control what you do at the beginning of the day and all the way through the end of the day. As a manager, I have to coach and influence that, but I ultimately can't get on every single phone call for you. I ultimately can't send all of your emails or sit behind you and just make sure that you're doing your job all day. And that was really, really hard for me. And it took a lot of mentorship and from my peers and my manager to really help me understand that. So all while I'm trying to help standardize and everything, I was also struggling just trying to get that buy-in and getting people to influence. So it wasn't perfect, I guess is what I'm trying to say. While I was going through this, I also noticed for our new hires is that depending on what manager they went to after their training, it was really dependent on what manager they went to because they're successful. Some managers are killer at developing reps to that next level. I could name a lot of them that are on the Reddit team. Others of us are really great at those people when they're new hires and trying to make sure that you feel success. You're like having those wins and you're learning quickly. And so I worked with my function lead or senior manager at the time and built out a path for what would become our first ramping team to help people ramp quicker. It included a bunch of follow-up trainings, but also exercises and workshops. And then, hey, each week, this is your ramping metrics of what you should be expecting and trying to hold accountable. My first cohort certified on the day we were told we were going to go to work from home for 3 weeks. And that was such a curveball because I had to not only like switch over to work from home with all the mental and emotional stress. I know, Nick, 3 weeks. We all were like, anyway, I had to make sure I had all the content. I did not have all the content built out. I was just going to share my screen and we are just going to go through and talk through it. You know, I was like, we were going to do a bunch of side-by-sides. How do you do that virtually? It was such a pivot. And, but what I found is that made it much more sustainable because here's the efficiency thing is I could make that replicatable and I could share it out. It could become a library of resources. And it really made the program better to where we were able to add in. Nick and Amanda could probably quote me on the number, but in the following Q1, so Q1 2021, we added, I want to say like 100 people onto the team. We had massive growth and we were able to do it because I had the program built out that we could put people through it and help ramp up a bunch of reps all at the same time. It was such a great learning. I know there's a few of you on here that were a part of that group. And it was such a great experience for me to see the impact. I could see I could see the rep, I could see them struggling. We teach it, we follow up, and then they go out and then they were able to go and be top performers, both here and for the next like programs to come. Yeah, I was okay. Thanks, Nick. I was like, I feel like 100. I remember Dan Peterson came to me and was like, so if we were to add 100 people next quarter, what would you do? So it was really, really incredible to be able to identify those efficiency gains. Like I knew that there was something, if we centralized and we were able to standardize, we could do that. And that was something that was true to me and that I took ownership. We weren't talking about doing something necessarily. And I was like, hey, manager, I think this is what we should do. Build it out, help do that, and all of that great stuff. Yes, Daisha was there. We had lots of fun. Through that experience, I was then promoted to senior manager, function lead, whatever title you want to call it. If you'll go to the next slide, which was such a fun time. And there was lots of change. Again, I'm lame and also didn't take pictures. So here's a picture where I hosted them at my house and we had a Christmas end of holiday year party. So I promise I had really, really great people. It was so busy. I was becoming a senior manager. We promoted a ton of managers. My manager moved to Pinterest directly. I had a new director. I had a new co-partner, and there was so much change, and it was so hard. I think there is a lot of what's the word? There was so much change and I wanted to do such a good job that I was like, how do I show up? So again, went to that, okay, I'm service oriented. I am efficiency. How can I do that? So it also allowed me to take a step back and start looking forward. Okay, so instead of looking at the 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks, let's look at the next couple months and the quarter ahead as to where we're going to be. And it was a really great wild year, but ultimately I felt like I needed a change, that I was that I really loved the business. I love working at Pinterest. I love doing all of that. I love the people that I work with, but I also wasn't happy. Like I just wasn't as happy. And I think it's because I love chaos as much as I say that. Like I really do love it. And we are getting to a really established program, and I was so loved it. Yes, I love that, Rebecca. And I needed to find a change. And luckily, through all of what I had accomplished in those years, really prepared me for that next phase. So I was able to be, I went from MarketStar to Reddit as FTE, or Reddit the client. And it has been such a great change. If you'll go to the next slide. It's been, I think when you think of that, it's like, oh, all the cool things, all of the benefits, but then also all of the fun trips, like those were all amazing. But what you don't see in pictures is all of the milestones we've been able to have. MarketStar Reddit team just had their 5-year milestone, which is such a great milestone. We've had incredible revenue breaking success, like revenue breaking days and weeks, and being along for those milestones really is what made this role so great for me. That took all of the understanding as an IC. I was able to have some empathy and be like, yeah, I know it sucks to prospect 100 people in a week or 100 people in a day, or whichever you're doing, or managing your pipeline could be really, really difficult. Managers, I understand that they're managing a lot, and really what they want to do is just sit and coach you and make sure that you do it. That you are able to grow. And our senior leaders, they're all in. They're all trying to help you. And so this really allowed me to, moving into this role, allowed me to keep the strategic and having a greater impact through service and efficiency, while also still working with great people at MarketStar. Let me double check, make sure I covered everything I wanted to. There. So yes, let's go to the next slide. So I've shared my story with you, but I really hope there's a few things that you can learn from it. Maybe something different spoke to you, but here are a few things. Take ownership of your career growth. I know I kind of talked about that at the beginning, but there wasn't someone that was sitting by my side that was like, hey, you need to really figure out how to do this more efficient, or you need to really figure out how to do XYZ. What's your next step? I had great managers that were guiding that, but as for like what the day-to-day was, I had to do it. Like my manager couldn't sit and tell me how to build out this career, this ramping path. I had to do it on my own, outside of all of the other things that I were doing. So really take ownership of your career growth and continue to move. Not every day will be perfect, but you can show up as yourself every day. I have had plenty of angry advertisers. I have plenty of campaigns that did not go well and the advertisers were frustrated. I also had days where I wasn't feeling well. My anxiety was taking over and that voice became so loud. But what I could do was show up every day as myself. At the time, that was being very service oriented and being like finding efficiency. Don't be afraid of change. I really, really believe you should enjoy what you're doing. That doesn't mean it's going to be every day it's a cakewalk and every day is easy, but you shouldn't be afraid of that change and be looking for different opportunities of, hey, maybe that would interest me. There are roles I applied for I was not qualified for, but I was open for a change and I wanted to try it out. And then be patient with yourself, because you might be doing everything and the person next to you just might be doing something, or they're just a little bit further ahead. They've been practicing and preparing for just a little bit longer. So be patient with yourself. The biggest thing is keep moving forward. There's a saying like you can't move a parked car. And I think as long as you're moving in a direction, you can always pivot and make changes. But if you're sitting in park, you can't move. So always be trying to move forward, but be patient with yourself because you don't know other people's journeys are. And that's all that I have. So thank you so much. I don't know if we have any questions. Well, thank you, Jessica. Joe emotional. That is quite the comment. I'll have to let Joel know that. So thank you. Maddie, do we want to turn it over to any questions? I know some of you might not have questions, but happy to share or elaborate anything.
Yes, definitely. If you guys have questions, come off mute or put them in the chat. But Joslyn, something I want to ask that you touched on was just, the change when you go from being an IC to a sales manager and how hard that can be. And I think that happens in every role. And it's something that I see a lot because you go from top performing rep and then you're a brand new sales manager. Or like in my case, a more senior sales manager, and then you become a function lead and you have to start all over trying to figure it out. So how have you been able to kind of career path and lead authentically to you when you're in those situations of growth?
Yeah. I'm probably just like beating it a little bit, but just being myself. I remember showing up to some one-on-ones where the rep just like didn't want to prospect, which again, I get it. I've been there. I was an IC. I had been there. And it's like, hey, let's sit side by side. You prospect some, I prospect some. Or what holds you back? And trying to really understand and ask those questions. So I think really just showing up and being myself was the biggest thing. And so being that service oriented. That said, I had a lot of great mentors and peers that I could go to. My manager, Matthew Check, for those that are on the Reddit team that would know him, he was my manager at the time, or my peers like Amanda Glover and others that really I could go to and just say, hey, how would you handle this situation? Or how would you go about that? So really leaning on your peers really helped me. And we also shared, like I could say, oh, hey, this is how I'm doing this for my new hires. Do you want them to join in? Where I was really able to share my knowledge and my expertise. They were also willing to help me in other scenarios. So be yourself, but then also lean on others as you go through patience and trying to figure it out. So.
Thank you. I think the be patient with yourself is probably the one that resonates the most with a lot of us. It's hard to do when you're in a career growth phase and you just need to be patient with yourself. Mm-hmm. Rebecca, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Joslyn, you said something that I just thought was so poignant when those early days when, we had that conversation about what do I need to do? Do I need to be more like a guy on the call? But I do remember so specifically, you were so good at just being vulnerable and raising your hand and saying, I don't know how this works. What do I need to do? Which to me is a huge show of strength. And I wonder if like that vulnerability, has that been sort of a conscious thing for you? Or was it just sort of that authentic self? Like, because I think that's such an important thing, especially for women to be cognizant of. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It had to be conscious because I feel like growing up, we were told like, yeah, you got to be like a man to be successful in business, which is not true. It is so not true. Look at your senior leadership that you have on your different teams. It is not true. And I remember just being like, it was really hard not being vulnerable because that's who I am. That's just naturally who I am. And going from not being vulnerable at work to home where I want to be, the change was really difficult. I worked in a kind of like an IFA store, but way less cool, way more like commercial, wearing Wranglers and boots to work every day. Like that's what I was doing before I came here. And it was very like, you don't talk about how you're feeling, if you're sick or whatever, don't want to hear about it. And I think being surrounded by leaders that really helped that drive that, like I didn't feel scared talking to you and saying, yeah, I'm not feeling well. I had a lot of like family things going on and I was very transparent and open about it at the time. And I think it is a conscious choice and it takes practice. So if you feel scared of asking, hey, can you listen to this call that I know I really sucked on? That's going to be really hard if that's your first time asking for that. But over time, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, hey, can you look at this? Because I know I just didn't do great. Like, help me do this. or being proactive, like, hey, I know I'm not going to do well on this. Can you join in proactively? It does take practice. But yeah, I would say it was a conscious choice. So if you're like, oh my gosh, how do you be vulnerable? Find your small wins, find your small wins and try it out. Because it will help you in just being more transparent as you grow. Yes, agreed for Rebecca.
We have one more question in the chat. Jess, do you want to come off mute and ask this? We all love to hear from you in these meetings and all of our other meetings.
Yeah. So what made you discover like those superpowers that you talked about, that you were very like organized and compassionate? Those were like the two main things that you did. How did you lean on those as being your superpowers as opposed to seeing things that maybe you admired in others and trying to adapt to that?
Yeah, I wasn't perfect at it. I'll just give you that. The last 7 years, I would say that was like the majority of the time that's what I was true to, but there was also times where I was like, whoa. And even now that I go into meetings and I'm like, whoa, this is not me. Let me take a step back. So I think identifying those is doing some soul searching, whether that be through personal development books, whether that be meditating. I know that sounds like really fluffy, but you really have to take some time and think through it and think through, like, what is your brand? What do you want to be remembered by? I want people to always think, wow, Joslyn was so kind. She was always there to serve me and help me no matter what. Even though sometimes it takes me a long time, I do try and get and help everyone as much as I can. And so I really had to take some time to think through that. And there were some things like, hey, I want to be really bold and I want to be more, I don't say harsh, that's not, like, just really bold. And that just wasn't, I'm a soft edges kind of person. Like, I'm just really, I tried some things out and those didn't fit. So do some thinking, also try some things out. And if it doesn't fit, then it might not be it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And I want you to know that kind is the word that all of us think of when we think of you. You're so kind, but you're also able to lead with a type of kindness that makes people want to follow suit. We want to listen to you because when you are directive, we know it's coming from a place of love and that you really know what you're talking about. So you've built an impeccable brand for yourself. And we all just want to thank you for being here, especially during a holiday week. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for the time.